The sweat rolled down Eloise Jennings's back as she pressed herself against the wall of the makeshift dance hall in Concord, California, watching the crowd spin and twirl in the lamplight like fireflies on a summer night. She told herself she had only come because her sister Martha begged her to, but the truth sat heavier in her chest than the corset digging into her ribs. She wanted to be seen just once, the way the other women were seen when men looked across a room with hope in their eyes. Instead, she stood in the shadows of the converted barn, invisible as smoke, while the fiddles sang and boots stomped against wooden planks worn smooth by 1,000 dances before this one. It was June of 1883, and the social had drawn folks from ranches and farms scattered across the valley. Concord was growing, transforming from a dusty collection of buildings into something that resembled a proper town. The railroad had brought prosperity, and with prosperity came reasons to celebrate. Tonight, the community gathered to mark the engagement of the banker's daughter, a delicate thing named Constance who floated across the floor like dandelion fluff. Eloise was 23 years old and had long since accepted that she would never float anywhere. She was a substantial woman, tall and broad-shouldered, with strong arms from helping her father work their small ranch after her brothers had died of fever 5 years past. Her mother had passed bringing Martha into the world, and so Eloise had raised her sister while managing the household and doing the work of 2 sons. She could rope a calf, mend a fence, and break a horse as well as any man in the county. But none of that mattered at a dance where women were judged by the smallness of their waists and the lightness of their steps. Martha was dancing now, her blonde curls bouncing as young Thomas Miller spun her in enthusiastic circles. At 18, Martha was everything Eloise was not. Small, delicate, with a laugh like bells. Men circled Martha like wolves around a campfire, drawn to her light. Eloise loved her sister fiercely, but watching her dance made something twist painfully in her chest. "You should be out there," her friend Rebecca whispered, appearing at her elbow with a cup of punch. Rebecca was married to the blacksmith, comfortably settled with 2 babies at home and the luxury of speaking her mind. "No one wants to dance with me," Eloise said simply. It was not self-pity, just fact. She had learned years ago not to hope for invitations that would never come. "You have not given them a chance to ask. I have been standing here for an hour. Every man in this room has looked right through me." Eloise took the punch and sipped it, grateful for something to do with her hands. The drink was too sweet, probably spiked with something stronger by the ranchers who gathered near the back door. Rebecca started to respond, but her attention shifted to the entrance. Eloise followed her gaze and saw a man she did not recognize stepping into the barn. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that filled his clean but worn shirt. His hat was pushed back, revealing dark hair and a face weathered by sun and wind. He moved with the careful grace of someone who spent more time with horses than people, and his eyes swept the room with the wariness of a man used to reading trouble before it arrived. "Who is that?" Rebecca breathed. "I have no idea." The stranger paused just inside the entrance, and Eloise saw old John Peterson approach him, shake his hand warmly. They spoke for a moment, John gesturing enthusiastically while the stranger nodded. Then John clapped him on the shoulder and moved away, leaving the newcomer standing alone at the edge of the crowd. Eloise watched as several of the available young women noticed him. She saw the calculation in their eyes, the subtle preening, but the stranger did not seem to notice them. His gaze traveled slowly around the room, and for just a moment, his eyes met hers across the crowded space. She looked away quickly, heat flooding her cheeks. That was foolish. He had not really been looking at her. He had probably been looking past her at someone else. The fiddle music shifted into a waltz and couples reformed on the floor. Martha was claimed immediately by another young man, this one the son of the feed store owner. Eloise set down her empty cup and considered slipping outside for air. The barn was hot and close, thick with the smell of bodies and perfume and the lingering scent of the hay that had been swept away to make room for dancing. "Miss." The voice came from directly beside her, deep and rough like gravel under wagon wheels. Eloise turned and found herself looking up at the stranger. Up close, she could see that his eyes were gray, the color of storm clouds, and there was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. "Yes." Her own voice came out smaller than she intended. "Would you care to dance?" For a long moment, Eloise could not process the words. They made no sense. Men did not ask her to dance. They asked Martha or any of the other pretty girls who giggled behind their hands and smelled like rosewater. They did not ask the big, awkward woman who was better with livestock than lace. She stammered, searching his face for the cruel joke, the mockery she had learned to expect. But his expression was open, hopeful even, with no trace of malice. "I am not much of a dancer," he admitted, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "But I would be honored if you would take a turn with me." Behind her, Eloise felt Rebecca give her a small push. The moment stretched thin as spider silk, fragile and strange. Then, moving as if in a dream, Eloise placed her hand in his. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip gentle but sure as he led her onto the floor. Eloise was acutely aware of every eye that turned their direction, every whisper that rippled through the crowd. But the stranger seemed oblivious to it all. He placed one hand at her waist, held her other hand carefully in his, and began to move. He had told the truth. He was not much of a dancer. His steps were simple, almost basic, but he moved with confidence and did not stumble. Eloise followed his lead, and to her surprise it was easy. She had secretly practiced in the barn at home when no one was watching, moving to music only she could hear. And now those stolen moments paid off. They moved together smoothly, and gradually Eloise stopped thinking about the people watching and focused only on the man before her. "I am Logan Pierce," he said after they had completed one rotation around the floor. "I just signed on as foreman at the Peterson Ranch." "Eloise Jennings," she managed, though her heart was beating so hard she could barely hear her own voice over it. "My father owns the small ranch east of town. I have seen your brand. The Circle J. John speaks highly of your operation." She blinked, surprised. "He does? Said you run a tight ship since your father's health has been failing. Said you have a good eye for horses and do not tolerate poor work." Pride flickered in her chest. She did work hard, though few people seemed to notice. Her father had suffered a stroke last winter and could no longer manage the physical demands of ranching. Eloise had taken over completely, with only old Miguel, their ranch hand, to help with the heaviest work. "John is kind to say so," she said carefully. The music swelled and Logan pulled her slightly closer. Eloise could smell him now, leather and soap and something else, something clean like grass after rain. Heat radiated from his body, and she felt it even through the layers of her dress. "He was not being kind," Logan said, his gray eyes serious. "He was being honest. That is a rare quality." Before Eloise could respond, the waltz ended. The fiddle player immediately launched into a lively reel, and other couples began to form up for the more energetic dance. Eloise expected Logan to thank her politely and return her to the wall. That was what happened in the stories Martha read after the obligatory single dance. Instead, Logan tightened his grip on her hand. "Another?" he asked. "You want to dance again?" "I want to dance with you again," he clarified, and there was something in the way he said it that made her breath catch. "I would like that," she whispered. They danced the reel and then another waltz, and then a Scottish that left them both laughing and slightly out of breath. Logan kept a respectful distance, always the perfect gentleman, but he never let go of her hand. When they needed to rest, he fetched them both punch and stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "Where are you from?" Eloise asked, her curiosity finally overcoming her shyness. "Your accent sounds different, not Californian." "Montana Territory," Logan said. "I worked a ranch up near Helena for 7 years. Before that, Colorado. What brought you to California?" His expression shifted, something dark passing behind his eyes. "Needed a change. Too many memories in Montana." He paused, then seemed to make a decision. "I was engaged to be married. She died of pneumonia 3 winters ago." "I am so sorry," Eloise said, and meant it. She saw the pain in his face, old but still sharp. "Her name was Catherine. We grew up together, planned our whole lives out before we were old enough to know better." Logan stared into his cup. "After she died, nothing felt right there anymore. Everywhere I looked, I saw her. So I moved south, worked my way through Nevada, and eventually ended up here." "That must have been very difficult." "It was. It still is some days." He looked at her directly then, his gray eyes intense. "But tonight, dancing with you, is the first time in 3 years I have felt like maybe I could be happy again. Like maybe there is still something good waiting for me." Eloise's heart hammered against her ribs. She did not know what to say to that, how to respond to such raw honesty. Before she could find words, Martha appeared at her elbow, eyes wide with barely contained excitement. "Eloise, Papa sent word. One of the mares is foaling and having trouble. Miguel needs you." Immediately, Eloise's mind shifted to the emergency. It would be Daisy, their best broodmare who had been close to her time. "I have to go," she said to Logan, already moving toward the door. "I will drive you," Logan said, falling into step beside her. "You do not have to do that. I want to." They hurried out into the cool night air. Logan's wagon was hitched near the back, and he helped her up before climbing into the driver's seat. He snapped the reins, and his horses, sensing the urgency, moved quickly down the rutted road toward the Jennings ranch. The ride took 20 minutes, and Eloise spent the time explaining the mare's history, her previous foalings, her bloodlines. Logan listened intently, asking intelligent questions that showed he understood horses. When they pulled into the yard, he jumped down and helped her from the wagon without being asked. The barn was lit from within, and they could hear the mare's distressed sounds before they entered. Miguel was in the stall, his weathered face creased with worry. "She is stuck, Miss Eloise. I can feel 2 hooves but nothing else. The baby, it is turned wrong." Eloise stripped off her gloves and assessed the situation quickly. She had done this before, helped birth dozens of foals, but it was always dangerous. If she could not turn the foal, they would lose it. If she waited too long or did it wrong, they would lose the mare too. "I need rope, blankets, and hot water," she said crisply, rolling up her sleeves. Logan moved immediately, finding the supplies without needing to be told where they were. He worked alongside Miguel with the efficient competence of a man who had done barn work his whole life. When everything was ready, Eloise knelt in the straw beside the laboring mare. "Easy, girl," she murmured, stroking Daisy's sweat-darkened neck. "We are going to help you." For the next hour, Eloise worked carefully, her smaller hands able to reach inside and feel the position of the foal. She worked by touch, gently maneuvering the tiny body, trying to find the head and turn it into the correct position. It was exhausting, delicate work, and sweat poured down her face despite the cool night air. Logan held the mare's head, speaking softly to keep her calm while Miguel stood ready with supplies. "Almost," Eloise breathed. "Just a little more. Come on, baby, work with me." She felt the moment the foal shifted into the right position, felt the head align with the hooves. There. Miguel, be ready. The mare gave a tremendous push, and suddenly the foal was sliding out in a rush of fluid and membrane. It lay still in the straw, a tiny bay colt with a white star on his forehead. Eloise grabbed the towels Logan handed her and quickly cleared the foal's airways, rubbing vigorously to stimulate breathing. For several terrifying seconds, nothing happened. Then the colt coughed, shuddered, and took his first gasping breath. The mare turned her head, nickering softly, and began to lick her baby. "You did it, Miss Eloise," Miguel said, relief evident in his voice. Eloise sat back on her heels, exhausted and filthy, her dress ruined and her hair falling around her shoulders in tangled waves. But she was smiling. "We all did it." She looked up and found Logan watching her with an expression she could not quite read. There was admiration there, certainly, but something else too, something that made her pulse quicken. "That was incredible," he said quietly. "I have seen plenty of cowboys, men who pride themselves on their livestock skills, and I have never seen anyone work with such patience and care. She is a good mare. She deserved the chance." Logan helped her to her feet, his hands strong and steady on her arms. They were standing very close in the dim barn, close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, close enough to feel his breath on her face. "You are remarkable, Eloise Jennings," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I knew it the moment I saw you tonight. You saw me, but I was standing against the wall in the shadows. I saw you," he repeated. "Everyone else in that room was trying so hard to be noticed, but you were different. You stood there with such quiet dignity, such strength. You reminded me of a painting I once saw in Denver of a queen standing watch over her kingdom. Regal, beautiful, beautiful. No one had ever called her beautiful, handsome sometimes, sturdy, capable, but never beautiful." "I am covered in blood and birth fluids," she said, trying for levity because the intensity in his eyes was overwhelming. "You are beautiful," he insisted. "Not just now, but always. I knew I had to meet you, had to know your name. That is why I came tonight, even though I do not like crowds or dancing. I saw you, Eloise. I have not been able to see anything else." Her throat tightened with emotion. She wanted to believe him, wanted so desperately to believe that this was real, that he meant these words. But years of invisibility, of being overlooked and dismissed, made doubt rise like bitter smoke. "Why?" she whispered. "Why me?" Logan reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his calloused fingers infinitely gentle against her skin. "Because you are strong and capable and kind. Because you just spent an hour saving a life without once thinking about yourself. Because when I look at you, I see everything I have been searching for without knowing it. I see home." Tears pricked at Eloise's eyes. "You barely know me." "Then let me know you better. Let me call on you properly. Let me court you if you will have me." He paused, vulnerability flickering across his strong features. "I know this is fast. I know I should wait, should take more time, but Catherine's death taught me that time is precious and uncertain. When you find something real, something true, you should not let it go. And this, what I feel when I look at you, this is real." Eloise searched his face, looking for deception, for the cruel joke, but she found only honesty and hope and something that might have been the beginning of love. In the stall behind them, the colt struggled to his feet on wobbly legs, seeking his mother's warmth and milk. New life, improbable and beautiful. "Yes," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Yes, you may court me." Logan's face transformed with his smile, years seeming to fall away from him. He looked young and hopeful, like a man who had been given a second chance at joy. "May I kiss you?" her heart stuttered. "Here, now, I am a mess. You are perfect." He cupped her face gently in both hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "May I?" "Yes," she breathed, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was gentle, almost chaste, but it sent lightning through Eloise's veins. His lips were warm and slightly chapped, and he tasted faintly of the spiked punch. He held her as if she were made of spun glass, precious and fragile, even though she was neither. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with emotion. "I will come calling tomorrow," he said, "if that is all right." That would be more than all right. Miguel cleared his throat pointedly from the barn entrance, reminding them they were not alone. Logan stepped back, though his hand lingered on her arm for a moment longer. "I should let you clean up and rest," he said. "It is late. Thank you for bringing me home, for helping. Thank you for the dances, for giving me hope." He squeezed her hand once more, then turned to leave. At the barn door, he paused and looked back. "Sleep well, Eloise. You too, Logan." She watched him drive away, the sound of the wagon wheels fading into the night. When she finally turned back to the barn, she found Miguel grinning at her, his dark eyes twinkling. "That is a good man, Miss Eloise. I have seen many men in my years, and that one has an honest heart." "I barely know him, Miguel. The heart knows before the head always." He gestured toward the house. "Go, clean yourself. I will stay with the mare and her baby tonight." Eloise walked to the house in a daze. Inside, she found her father asleep in his chair by the fire, his mouth open and snoring softly. She covered him with a blanket, then climbed the stairs to her room. In the small mirror above her washstand, she studied her reflection. Her hair was a disaster, her face smudged with dirt, her dress completely ruined. She looked like she had been dragged behind a horse, but her eyes were bright, and her cheeks were flushed, and for the first time in years she looked happy. She looked like a woman who had been kissed. Like a woman who had been seen. She stripped off the ruined dress and washed carefully, then climbed into bed. Sleep should have come easily after such an exhausting night, but her mind spun with memories. Logan's smile. His hands, gentle on her waist. The way he had said her name, like it was something precious. The kiss that had set her whole body alight. Tomorrow he would come calling. Tomorrow her life might truly change. For the first time since her brothers died and her world had narrowed to duty and work, Eloise let herself hope for something more. The next morning dawned bright and warm, the California sun burning away the cool night air. Eloise woke early, as always, and went about her morning chores. She fed the chickens, collected eggs, checked on the mare and her healthy colt, and helped Miguel mend a section of fence that had come loose. But all the while her mind was elsewhere, replaying the previous night's events. Martha burst out of the house around mid-morning, still in her nightgown, her blonde curls tangled from sleep. "Eloise, Rebecca came by the dance after you left and told everyone what happened. She said that handsome stranger danced with you all night and then drove you home. Is it true?" "Lower your voice," Eloise said, glancing at the house. "You will wake Papa. Papa has been awake for an hour. He is having breakfast. Tell me everything." So Eloise told her, leaving out only the kiss, which felt too private and precious to share even with her beloved sister. Martha listened with rapt attention, gasping and sighing at all the appropriate moments. "He said you were beautiful. Oh, Eloise, that is so romantic. He might not even come today. Maybe he changed his mind in the night. Do not be silly. Rebecca said he looked at you like you hung the moon. He will come." But as morning stretched into afternoon and then toward evening, Eloise began to doubt. She bathed and changed into her best day dress, a simple blue cotton that Martha swore brought out the green flecks in her hazel eyes. She braided her dark hair and pinched her cheeks for color, feeling foolish for trying so hard. But still, no wagon appeared on the road. By the time the sun began its descent toward the western hills, Eloise had convinced herself it had all been too good to be true. Logan had probably woken up and remembered what she looked like in daylight, without the romance of lamplight and music to soften her rough edges. He had probably realized he could do better, find someone prettier, someone more like Catherine must have been. She was in the barn, brushing down one of their geldings with more force than necessary, when Martha called from the yard. "Eloise, someone is coming." Eloise dropped the brush and hurried to the barn entrance. Sure enough, a wagon was approaching, pulled by the same two horses she remembered from the night before. Logan sat in the driver's seat, and even from a distance, she could see his smile. Her hands flew to her hair, checking that her braid was still neat, and then she forced herself to walk calmly across the yard. Martha had wisely disappeared into the house, though Eloise could feel her watching from the kitchen window. Logan climbed down from the wagon, holding a bundle of wildflowers that looked like he had picked them along the road. His hair was damp, recently washed, and he wore clean clothes, his best shirt buttoned all the way up and tucked neatly into his pants. "Miss Jennings," he said formally, then his composure cracked and his smile widened. "Eloise, I apologize for the late hour. The day got away from me at the Peterson ranch. We had a sick horse that needed attention, and I could not leave until I was sure he would recover." "That is all right," Eloise said, relief flooding through her. "I understand. The work comes first." "Not first," Logan corrected gently. "Not anymore, but it had to be done." He held out the flowers. "These are for you. I know they are just wildflowers, nothing fancy, but I thought you might like them." Eloise took the bundle, touched beyond words. The flowers were simple, cheerful yellows and purples and whites, but they were the first flowers a man had ever given her. "They are beautiful, thank you." "Would you like to sit?" Logan gestured to the porch, where her father had built a bench swing years ago. "If your father approves, of course. I should introduce myself to him properly." As if summoned, Eloise's father appeared at the door. James Jennings was a shadow of the man he had been before his stroke, his left side still weak and his speech slightly slurred, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "Papa, this is Logan Pierce. He is the new foreman at the Peterson ranch. Logan, this is my father, James Jennings." Logan stepped forward immediately, extending his hand. "Sir, it is an honor to meet you. John Peterson speaks very highly of your ranch and your daughter's work." James shook Logan's hand, studying him carefully. "You are the one who danced with my Eloise last night and drove her home." "Yes, sir. I hope that was acceptable." "Acceptable? She came home smiling for the first time in months. That is more than acceptable." James's expression softened. "You may sit with her on the porch. I will be in the parlor if you need anything." He disappeared back inside, and Eloise caught a glimpse of Martha dragging him away from the window where he had clearly been planning to spy. Logan grinned. "Your family seems nice." "They are. Overprotective, perhaps, but nice." They sat on the swing, and Logan set it into gentle motion with his foot. For a few minutes, they simply sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Eloise held the wildflowers in her lap, their sweet scent rising in the warm evening air. "I thought about you all day," Logan said finally. "I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to last night, to dancing with you, to the way you saved that foal, to how it felt to kiss you." Heat flooded Eloise's cheeks. "I thought about you too." "I know this is moving fast." "Too fast, probably. But I meant what I said last night. I feel something when I am with you, something I thought I would never feel again." He turned to face her, his gray eyes serious. "I am not a wealthy man, Eloise. I make decent wages as a foreman, and I have some savings, but I will never be rich. I work long hours, and ranching is hard, uncertain work. But I am honest and I am loyal, and I would spend every day trying to make you happy if you gave me the chance." Logan, we have only known each other for a day. I know, and I am not asking you to marry me today. I am just asking you to let me try. Let me court you properly. Let me prove to you that this is real." Eloise looked at him, at his open, honest face, and felt something inside her chest crack open. She had spent so long protecting herself, building walls against hope and disappointment. But Logan was offering her something she had never thought to have, a chance at love, at partnership, at being chosen. "What if you change your mind?" she whispered. "What if you wake up one day and realize I am not what you thought I was? What if you are exactly what I thought and more?" Logan countered. He reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "I see you, Eloise. Not what you think you are, but what you actually are. Strong, capable, kind, beautiful. You are the kind of woman who saves lives and works until her hands bleed and still has the grace to accept flowers from a nervous cowboy. You are remarkable, and I am not going to change my mind about that." Tears stung her eyes. She blinked them back, but one escaped anyway, trailing down her cheek. Logan reached up and gently wiped it away with his thumb. "Please do not cry." "I am not sad," she said, her voice thick. I did not think anyone would ever see me the way you do. Then they were fools. Every single one of them." She laughed, a watery sound, and squeezed his hand. "You may court me, Logan Pierce. I would like that very much." His smile could have lit the darkening sky. "Thank you. You will not regret this, I promise." They sat on the swing until full dark, talking about everything and nothing. Logan told her about growing up in Colorado, about learning to ride before he could walk, about the wild horses he had helped break and the cattle drives he had survived. Eloise told him about her brothers, about the fever that had taken them, about stepping into their shoes and learning to run the ranch. She told him about her fears for her father's health, about her hopes for Martha's future, about the dream she harbored of breeding fine horses that would be known throughout California. When Logan finally left, promising to return the next evening, Eloise floated into the house. She found her father and sister waiting in the parlor, both trying to look casual and failing miserably. "He is a good man," her father said without preamble. "I asked around about him today. Everyone says he is honest, hard-working, fair with the men under him. And he looks at you like you hung the stars." "Papa," Eloise protested, embarrassed. "It is true," Martha chimed in. "I was watching from the window and he could not take his eyes off you. It was terribly romantic. You should not have been spying. How else am I supposed to live vicariously through you? My own romance prospects are terribly dull by comparison." "Thomas Miller seems quite interested in you," Eloise pointed out. Martha wrinkled her nose. "Thomas is nice enough, but he talks only about feed prices and his father's store. He has no poetry in his soul. Not everyone can be swept off their feet by a mysterious stranger," Eloise said. But she was smiling. Over the following weeks, Logan kept his promise. He came every evening after work, sometimes just for an hour, sometimes staying for dinner when her father invited him. He helped with chores without being asked, mending fences and checking on livestock, his strong presence making the work lighter. He brought small gifts, nothing expensive but always thoughtful. A ribbon for Martha that matched her blue dress, a special liniment for her father's weak leg, a book of poetry for Eloise that he had bought from the general store. They talked endlessly, discovering shared dreams and complementary differences. Logan loved his work but wanted his own ranch someday, a modest spread where he could raise horses and maybe a few cattle. Eloise shared her breeding plans, and Logan listened with genuine interest, offering suggestions based on his years of experience. They debated training methods and bloodlines, and Eloise found herself falling deeper with each conversation. But it was not just the shared interests that drew her. It was the way Logan helped Martha with her arithmetic without being asked, patiently explaining concepts until they made sense. It was the way he spoke respectfully to old Miguel, valuing his experience and knowledge. It was the way he never made Eloise feel self-conscious about her size or her strength, instead seeming to admire both. A month after they met, Logan arrived one evening with a picnic basket. "I thought we could go to the creek," he said. "If your father approves, of course." Miguel said he would come along as chaperone to keep everything proper. The creek ran through the eastern edge of the Jennings property, a clear stream shaded by cottonwood trees. It was Eloise's favorite spot on the ranch, a place she went when she needed to think or when the weight of responsibility grew too heavy. She had never shown it to anyone outside her family. "I would like that," she said. Miguel drove the wagon while Eloise and Logan sat in the back. It was a beautiful August evening, the heat of the day giving way to cooler air as the sun descended. When they reached the creek, Miguel settled himself against a tree with his pipe, close enough to be present but far enough to give them some privacy. Logan spread a blanket on the grass near the water and unpacked the basket. He had prepared the food himself, he admitted with dubious results. The bread was slightly burned, the cheese uneven, but Eloise found it charming. They ate and talked, and when the food was gone, they lay on the blanket and watched the sky fade from blue to purple to deep indigo scattered with stars. "I love this place," Eloise said softly. "I used to come here with my brothers. We would skip stones and catch fish and dream about our futures." They wanted to expand the ranch, make it the biggest in the county. They had such big dreams. "What were your dreams?" Logan asked, rolling onto his side to look at her. "I dreamed of going to San Francisco. I wanted to see the ocean, to walk on cobblestone streets, to visit the opera. I wanted to be someone different, someone refined and educated." She laughed softly. "Foolish dreams for a ranch girl." "Not foolish, you could still do those things. Papa needs me here, Martha needs me, the ranch needs me." "What about what you need?" The question hung in the air between them. Eloise had spent so long thinking about everyone else's needs that she barely remembered how to consider her own. "I need this," she said finally, gesturing to the ranch, the creek, the sky. "I need to know that what my brothers started will continue, that their dreams were not wasted." "But what about your dreams?" She turned her head to look at him. "I think my dreams are changing. I used to want to be someone else, somewhere else. But now I think maybe I just wanted to be seen where I am, to matter to someone." "You matter to me," Logan said, his voice rough with emotion. "You matter more than anyone has in years." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but Eloise met him halfway. This kiss was different from their first, deeper and more urgent. His hand came up to cradle her head, fingers tangling in her hair, and she pressed closer, her own hands gripping his shoulders. She could feel his heart pounding against her chest, could taste the sweetness of the berries they had eaten. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Logan rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling in love with you, Eloise Jennings," he whispered. "I tried to take it slow, to be sensible, but I cannot help it. I am in love with you." Joy and terror warred in her chest. "Logan." "You do not have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Whatever you feel, however long it takes, I will wait. I am not going anywhere." But the truth was, Eloise did not need more time. She had fallen in love with him weeks ago, maybe even that first night when he had crossed a crowded room and seen her when no one else would. She had fallen in love with his kindness, his strength, his gentle patience. She had fallen in love with the way he made her feel seen and valued and beautiful. "I love you too," she said, and watched his face transform with wonder. "I think I have loved you since you asked me to dance." Logan kissed her again and then again, and only Miguel's pointed cough reminded them they were not alone. They broke apart, laughing and flushed, and packed up the picnic. On the ride back to the house, Logan held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I want to marry you," he said quietly. "I know it is soon, but I am sure. I have never been more sure of anything in my life." "Yes," Eloise said, her heart full to bursting. "Yes, I will marry you." Logan let out a shout of joy that startled the horses and set Miguel laughing. When they reached the house, Logan formally asked her father for permission, and James gave it gladly, tears in his eyes as he shook Logan's hand. "You take care of my girl," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "She has taken care of everyone else for so long. She deserves someone who will take care of her." "I will, sir. Every day for the rest of my life." They decided to marry in September, giving them just a few weeks to prepare. Eloise wanted a simple ceremony, just family and close friends at the small church in Concord. Logan agreed readily, caring only that they would be married, not how it happened. The weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of activity. Rebecca helped Eloise sew a wedding dress from cream-colored silk that Logan had bought at great expense. Martha gathered wildflowers and learned to make preserves for the small celebration afterward. Logan and Miguel built a small addition onto the Jennings house, 2 rooms that would be Logan and Eloise's private space, while still allowing them to help care for her father. Logan officially gave his notice at the Peterson ranch, and John, true to form, helped him secure a loan to buy the small ranch adjacent to the Jennings property. It was only 80 acres, but it had good grazing land and a sturdy barn. Combined with the Jennings land, they would have a substantial operation. Logan planned to merge the herds and focus on horse breeding, using Eloise's eye for quality and his training skills. The night before the wedding, tradition dictated that Logan could not see Eloise. He stayed at the Peterson ranch while Eloise spent the evening with Martha and Rebecca, trying and failing to sleep. Her mind spun with excitement and nervousness and disbelief that this was really happening, that she was really marrying Logan Pierce. "Are you scared?" Martha asked as they lay in the dark, sharing Eloise's bed one last time. "A little," Eloise admitted. "Not of Logan, but of everything changing. What if I am not a good wife? What if I disappoint him?" "You could never disappoint him. He loves you exactly as you are." Martha squeezed her hand. "I am so happy for you, Eloise. You deserve this. You deserve all the happiness in the world. What about you? Will you be all right with Papa?" "I will be fine. Rebecca said I can stay with her family if Papa needs more help than I can give, and Thomas Miller has been calling more often." Martha's voice turned shy. "He asked Papa if he could court me officially, and you said yes." "I did. He is not very poetic, but he is kind, and he makes me laugh. Maybe that is enough." "I think that might be more than enough." The next morning dawned clear and beautiful, the September air crisp and clean. Rebecca and Martha helped Eloise into her wedding dress, the silk cool and smooth against her skin. Her dark hair was piled on her head in an elaborate style that Martha had practiced for days, with small white flowers tucked into the curls. When Eloise looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked elegant, radiant, happy. She looked like a bride. The church was small and simple, the pews filled with familiar faces. John Peterson was there with his wife, Miguel, in his best suit, neighbors from surrounding ranches. But Eloise saw only Logan, standing at the altar in a new suit, his dark hair slicked back and his gray eyes bright with emotion. Her father walked her down the aisle, his gait unsteady but his back straight with pride. When he placed her hand in Logan's, he whispered, "Be happy, my dear girl." "I will, Papa." The ceremony was simple but beautiful. They spoke their vows in strong, clear voices, promising to love and cherish each other through all the challenges life might bring. When the minister finally said Logan could kiss his bride, Logan cupped Eloise's face in his hands and kissed her with such tenderness that several people in the pews sighed audibly. "I love you, Mrs. Pierce," Logan whispered against her lips. "I love you too, Mr. Pierce." The celebration afterward was held at the Jennings house, with food and music and dancing. Logan danced with Eloise, holding her close and whispering words meant only for her ears. He danced with Martha, making her giggle. He even convinced James to take a slow turn around the floor, supporting most of his weight but making it look easy. As the sun set and guests began to leave, Logan and Eloise escaped to their new rooms. Logan carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the middle of their bedroom. "Hello, wife," he said, pulling her close. "Hello, husband." He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, his hands learning the shape of her through the silk dress. Eloise kissed him back, her nervousness melting away in the warmth of his embrace. This was Logan, the man who had seen her when no one else would, who had chosen her and kept choosing her every day. She was safe with him. Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a discovery of each other that left them both breathless and amazed. Logan was patient and gentle, making sure she felt loved and cherished. When they finally lay tangled together in the darkness, Eloise felt a contentment she had never known before. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what? For seeing me, for asking me to dance, for never letting go." Logan tightened his arms around her, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I will never let go, I promise you that. Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," she agreed, and fell asleep in his arms. The months after their wedding settled into a comfortable rhythm. Logan and Eloise worked the combined ranches together, their skills complementing each other perfectly. Logan handled the heavy physical work and the training, while Eloise managed the breeding program and the financial aspects. They made a formidable team, and the ranch prospered. Martha's courtship with Thomas Miller progressed steadily. By Christmas, he had proposed and they planned a spring wedding. James's health remained stable, and having Logan in the house seemed to lift his spirits. He and Logan spent long hours playing checkers and discussing ranch business, and James began to regain some of his old confidence. In late January, Eloise woke feeling queasy. At first, she thought it was something she had eaten, but when the nausea persisted for several days, Rebecca took one look at her and smiled knowingly. "You are pregnant," Rebecca declared. "I cannot be. We have only been married for months." "That is plenty of time. Trust me, I know the signs." Eloise's hand went to her stomach, wonder and fear warring inside her. A baby. She was going to have Logan's baby. When she told him that evening, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to be parents," he said, setting her down carefully as if she were suddenly made of glass. "We are going to have a family. Are you happy?" "Happy, Eloise, I am beyond happy. I am blessed." He knelt down and pressed a kiss to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. I am your papa, and I already love you more than you can imagine." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Eloise continued working on the ranch through her first months, though Logan and Miguel took on more of the physical labor, both men hovering protectively. By late spring, as her belly swelled and moving became more difficult, she finally agreed to focus on the bookwork and lighter tasks. Martha married Thomas in April in a ceremony very similar to Eloise's. Thomas was a good man, steady and reliable, and he clearly adored Martha. They moved into the apartment above the feed store, close enough to visit often but giving them independence. James walked Martha down the aisle with Logan's support, and there was not a dry eye in the church. In September, Exactly 1 year after she had married Logan, Eloise went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Logan feared he would lose her. But Eloise was strong as the work-hardened ranch woman she was, and when dawn broke, she delivered a healthy baby boy. "He is perfect," Logan said, tears streaming down his face as he held his son for the first time. The baby had Eloise's dark hair and Logan's gray eyes and tiny, perfect fingers that wrapped around Logan's thumb. "What should we name him?" Eloise asked, exhausted but radiant. Logan looked at her, then at their son. "James, after your father, if that is all right with you." Eloise's eyes filled with tears. "Papa would be honored." They called him Jamie, and he became the center of their world. Logan was a devoted father, rising for night feedings and changing diapers without complaint. He sang to Jamie in his rough voice, telling him stories about the ranch and the horses and the beautiful, strong woman who was his mother. James Sr. wept when he held his grandson, and the baby seemed to breathe new life into him. His health improved, and he spent hours rocking Jamie and telling him stories about his mother and uncles as children. The years passed quickly, each one bringing new blessings. When Jamie was 2, Eloise gave birth to twin girls, Alina and Rose. Logan had hoped for one baby and got 2, and his joy knew no bounds. The ranch continued to prosper, their breeding program becoming known throughout Northern California. They had to hire additional hands to keep up with the work. Martha and Thomas had 3 children in quick succession, and the cousins grew up running wild between the ranch and the feed store, brown from the sun and happy. Miguel grew old but refused to retire, claiming the ranch was his home and he would die in the saddle. James Sr. passed peacefully in his sleep when Jamie was 5, surrounded by family and content in the knowledge that his daughter was loved and his legacy secure. Through it all, Logan and Eloise remained deeply in love. They still danced in the kitchen when the children were asleep, moving to music only they could hear. Logan still brought Eloise wildflowers, and she still blushed like a girl when he told her she was beautiful. They worked side by side, raised their children together, and built a life that was richer than either had dreamed possible. 10 years after that first dance, Eloise stood on the porch of their expanded house, watching Logan teach Jamie to rope a calf while the twins cheered from the fence. The ranch spread out before her, prosperous and well-maintained, a testament to years of hard work and love. She was 33 years old, her hands calloused and her face tanned, her body marked by childbirth and labor, and she had never felt more beautiful. Because Logan still looked at her the way he had that first night, with wonder and love and absolute devotion. He caught her watching and smiled, that same smile that had stolen her heart a decade ago. She smiled back, her heart full. That evening, after the children were tucked into bed, Logan pulled Eloise onto the porch swing they had brought from her father's house. The night was cool and clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the black sky. "You remember the night I proposed?" Logan asked. "At the creek?" "Of course. How could I forget? Do you ever regret it? Marrying me so quickly, binding your life to mine?" Eloise turned to look at him, studying the face she knew as well as her own. There were lines around his eyes now, silver threading through his dark hair, but he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. "I have never regretted a single moment," she said firmly. "You gave me everything I did not know I needed. You saw me when I was invisible, and you never stopped seeing me. How could I regret that?" "You gave me something too," Logan said, taking her hand. "You gave me hope again. You gave me a reason to live instead of just existing. You gave me a home and a family and a love I thought I had lost forever. You saved me, Eloise. We saved each other." He kissed her, and it was both familiar and thrilling, the kiss of long-married lovers who still delighted in each other. When they broke apart, Logan rested his forehead against hers, just as he had that first night at the creek. "I love you, Eloise Pierce. I will love you until the day I die and beyond. I love you too, Logan Pierce, always and forever." They sat on the swing as the night deepened, wrapped in each other's arms, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling for sleep. Inside the house, their children dreamed peacefully. Around them, the land they had built together stretched out in all directions, fertile and thriving. And above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient dance, bearing witness to a love that had started with a simple invitation to dance, and had grown into something beautiful and lasting and true. Years continued to flow like the creek on their property, steady and sure. The ranch became one of the most respected in the region, known for producing exceptional horses. Jamie grew into a fine young man, as good with livestock as his parents and as honest as his grandfather had been. The twins, Alina and Rose, were inseparable despite their different personalities. Alina was practical and strong like her mother, while Rose was gentle and thoughtful, with a gift for healing injured animals. When Jamie was 18, he fell in love with the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a spirited young woman named Catherine. Logan and Eloise watched their son court his sweetheart with the same intensity Logan had once shown, and they both smiled, remembering. Jamie and Catherine married in the same small church where Logan and Eloise had wed, and the circle continued. Martha and Thomas's children also grew and married, and soon there were grandchildren running through both properties. The feed store prospered under Thomas's careful management, and Martha became known throughout Concord for her charitable work, never forgetting what it felt like to need help. Miguel finally passed in his 80s, peaceful in his sleep after a full day's work. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, and Logan carved a marker that read, "A faithful friend and honest man." For weeks after, Logan would ride up to the grave and speak to Miguel, telling him about the horses and the children and the life they continued to build. The ranch expanded again when an elderly neighbor decided to sell. Logan and Jamie worked together to integrate the new land, and it became clear that Jamie was ready to start taking on more responsibility. Logan began to slowly step back, spending more time with Eloise, traveling occasionally to San Francisco so she could finally see the ocean and walk those cobblestone streets she had dreamed of as a girl. They stood on the wharf in San Francisco when Eloise was 45, watching ships come and go in the harbor. The salt wind whipped her hair, now threaded with gray, and she breathed deeply of the ocean air. "Is it what you imagined?" Logan asked, his arm around her waist. "It is beautiful," Eloise said, "but do you know what? I do not wish I had come here sooner or chosen a different life. This is wonderful to visit, but my life is back there." She gestured east toward the inland valleys where their ranch waited. "My life is with you, with our children on our land. I would not trade that for all the cities in the world." Logan kissed her temple. "Good, because I would be lost without you." They returned to the ranch renewed, ready for the next chapter. Alina announced her engagement to a veterinarian from Sacramento, a young man who shared her passion for healing. Rose surprised everyone by deciding to attend a teaching college in San Francisco, determined to bring better education to rural communities. Logan and Eloise supported both their daughters, proud of the strong, independent women they had become. On their 20th anniversary, Logan planned a surprise. He took Eloise back to the creek where he had proposed, where they had first declared their love. The spot was carefully maintained, still beautiful and peaceful. But when they arrived, Eloise gasped. Logan had built a small gazebo beside the water, a permanent structure with benches and a roof, a place where they could sit in any weather. Carved into the wood above the entrance were their initials and the date of their first dance. "I wanted you to have something lasting," Logan said. "A place that is just ours, where we can come and remember how this all started. Where we can sit when we are old and gray and tell our grandchildren about the night I asked an invisible woman to dance, and she changed my life forever." Eloise could not speak through her tears. She simply walked into the gazebo and pulled Logan down beside her on the bench. They sat in their special place, holding hands, watching the water flow past just as the years had flowed past, constant and true. "You were never invisible to me," Logan said softly. "From the moment I saw you, you were the only one I could see. You shone so bright, Eloise. You still do." "I feel like I have lived 3 lifetimes in one," Eloise said. "The girl I was before, so unsure and lonely. The woman I became with you, strong and loved and happy. And now, this woman I am growing into, a mother and grandmother, still working the land but also finally letting myself rest sometimes. You earned the right to rest, but knowing you, you will never fully stop. It is not in your nature. Maybe not, but I can slow down. Let Jamie and his Catherine take more of the load. Spend more time here with you, in our gazebo." And that is what they did. As the years advanced and they moved into their 50s and then 60s, Logan and Eloise gradually handed over the daily operation of the ranch to their children. Jamie proved to be an excellent manager, combining his parents' best qualities. Elinor and her husband opened a veterinary practice that served the whole valley, often treating the ranch's horses. Rose returned from college and started a school for ranch children, teaching them not just reading and arithmetic, but also the value of the land and the heritage of the region. The grandchildren multiplied, and the ranch house was always full of noise and laughter. Logan built each grandchild a small rocking horse, carved and painted with care, each one unique. Eloise taught the older grandchildren to bake and sew, and also to rope and ride, believing that all skills were valuable regardless of gender. On quiet evenings, Logan and Eloise would slip away to their gazebo by the creek. Sometimes they talked for hours, rehashing old memories or discussing the future. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, hands joined, watching the water and the sky. It was their sanctuary, a physical representation of the love they had built together. When Logan turned 68, he suffered a minor heart episode that frightened everyone. The doctor ordered him to take it even easier to avoid heavy work and stress. For a man who had worked hard his entire life, it was a difficult adjustment, but Eloise was firm. "You are not leaving me," she told him sternly, even as tears ran down her face. "We have years left together. You promised you would never let go, and I am holding you to that promise." "I am not going anywhere," Logan assured her, pulling her into his arms. "It will take more than a weak heart to separate me from you." He recovered, but the incident reminded them both that their time was precious. They began to be more intentional about making memories, about telling their children and grandchildren the stories of their past, about passing on not just the ranch but the values they had built it on. Hard work, yes, but also kindness, fairness, the belief that everyone deserves to be seen and valued. On a warm June evening, almost exactly 40 years after that first dance, Logan and Eloise celebrated their 40th anniversary. The whole family gathered at the ranch for a party that lasted well into the night. Jamie gave a speech about his parents' love and dedication, making everyone cry. The grandchildren performed a play they had written about the night their grandparents met, complete with costumes and a makeshift barn constructed from old fence posts. When the party finally wound down and the family dispersed to various houses and bedrooms, Logan led Eloise to the gazebo one more time. The moon was full, silver light turning the creek into a ribbon of mercury. 40 years, Logan said, shaking his head in wonder. Where did the time go? Into a life well lived, Eloise responded. Into love and family and work that mattered. I would not change a single day. Even the hard days, the times we fought or struggled, especially those days, they made us stronger. They proved that our love could weather anything. Logan pulled her close, and they danced slowly with no music except the sound of the creek and the night birds calling. Eloise rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, grateful beyond words for every moment they had been given. I am so glad you saw me that night, she whispered. I am so glad you let me see you. So glad you took a chance on a lonely cowboy with too many memories and not enough hope. You gave me everything, Logan. We gave each other everything. That is what love is, I think. Seeing someone completely and choosing them anyway. Every day, over and over, until the days add up to a lifetime. They danced until the moon set, and the first hints of dawn touched the eastern sky. Then, arm in arm, they walked back to the house where their family slept, where their life together continued to unfold in the form of children and grandchildren, who carried pieces of them forward into the future. The ranch thrived for generations, always known as the Pierce Jennings Ranch, never just one name or the other. The story of how it began with a dance and a promise and two people who saw each other when no one else did, became family legend. The gazebo by the creek became a sacred place where Pierce Jennings couples went to propose, to celebrate anniversaries, to remember what real love looked like. Logan and Eloise lived to see their great-grandchildren born, to hold babies who had their eyes and their smiles. They grew old together, their bodies aging but their love remaining as strong as ever. Logan's heart continued to give him trouble, and Eloise's joints ached from years of hard work, but they faced each challenge together, just as they always had. On a crisp October morning, when Eloise was 71 and Logan was 73, they rode out to the gazebo together one last time. The air smelled of fallen leaves and wood smoke, and the cottonwood trees blazed gold against the blue sky. They sat on their bench, holding hands, watching the creek flow past. It has been a good life, Logan said contentedly. Better than I ever dreamed possible. The best life, Eloise agreed. I was invisible until you saw me, and then I became more myself than I ever knew I could be. You were never invisible, my love. You were just waiting for the right person to look. I am so grateful I was that person. I am grateful, too, for everything, for every dance, every sunrise, every moment we have shared. They sat until the shadows grew long, then rode slowly back to the house where their family waited. That night, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, Logan and Eloise sat in their favorite chairs by the fire, hands joined between them. The family talked and laughed around them, telling stories and making plans, and Logan and Eloise simply soaked it in. This was their legacy, not just the land or the horses, but this family, this love that had started with a single dance and had multiplied across the years into something beautiful and lasting. When everyone finally left for the night, and the house grew quiet, Eloise and Logan climbed the stairs to their bedroom, the same room where they had spent their wedding night so many years ago. They helped each other prepare for bed with the easy familiarity of decades together, and when they finally lay down, they curled together as they always had, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. I love you, Eloise Pierce, Logan whispered into the darkness. Until my last breath and beyond. I love you too, Logan Pierce. You are my everything." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, and sometime in the deep hours of the night, Logan's tired heart finally stopped. He went peacefully, without pain, surrounded by the love that had defined his life. When Eloise woke in the morning and found him gone, she wept, but not with regret. She wept because she would miss him desperately, but also with gratitude for the 47 years they had been given, for a love that had transformed them both. At Logan's funeral, the church in Concord was packed with family, friends, and people whose lives he had touched. Eloise stood strong, supported by her children, and spoke about the man she had loved, the cowboy who had seen her when she was invisible and had never let go, just as he promised. She lived another 5 years, long enough to see Jamie's grandson born and named Logan in honor of his great-grandfather. She spent her days working in the garden she and Logan had planted together, visiting the gazebo by the creek, and telling anyone who would listen about the night a lonely ranch woman had been asked to dance by a handsome stranger, and how that single moment had changed everything. When Eloise finally passed in her sleep at 76, the family buried her next to Logan on the hill overlooking the ranch, near Miguel's grave. Her marker read, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She was seen, she was loved, she was everything." On the night after the funeral, the entire family gathered at the gazebo by the creek. They stood in a circle, 3 generations of Pierce Jennings descendants, and they told the story once more. The story of how it all began, with a heavy woman who felt invisible at a social, and a cowboy who asked her to dance and never let go. They told it so that the youngest would remember, so that the legacy would continue, so that the love that had built their family would never be forgotten. And in the years that followed, whenever a Pierce Jennings felt invisible or unwanted or unsure of their worth, the family would bring them to the gazebo and tell them the story. They would remind them that everyone is seen by someone, that love can come when you least expect it, and that a single moment of courage, a single choice to reach across a crowded room and extend your hand, can echo through generations, creating ripples of love and family and belonging that never truly end. The ranch continued to prosper, passing down through the generations, always remembering the 2 people who had built it with their hands and their hearts. The gazebo was maintained and cherished, a monument to a love story that had started in 1883 with a dance and had grown into something eternal. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the moon was full and the creek sang its ancient song, people swore they could see 2 figures dancing in the gazebo. A tall man and a strong woman, moving together to music only they could hear, their love transcending even death, eternal as the land they had loved and the family they had created. Dancing still, forever and always, never letting go.